Ambassador Yunakim stood alone in the center of the great chamber. The room was enormous, built from crystals that glowed with soft blue light. Around her, rising in circles like a stadium, sat the representatives of 47 alien species. They watched her with eyes of every color and shape. Some had no eyes at all. This was the Galactic Council. They had ruled the known universe for 3,000 years. And today, they had called humanity to answer for its crimes. Yuna kept her face calm. She had practiced this expression for weeks. Inside, her heart beat fast, but she would not let them see her fear. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. They had only met aliens 15 years ago. In the eyes of the galaxy, humanity was a child species, barely worth noticing, but the Council had noticed them. And the Council was not happy. High Arbiter Vorath rose from his seat at the top of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. His species, the Keth, had led the Council since before humans learned to make fire. When he spoke, his voice filled the room like thunder. The species known as humans has expanded beyond its borders, Vorath said. In 15 years, they have claimed 17 star systems. They have built colonies on worlds that were not theirs to take. They have disturbed the balance of the galaxy. Una wanted to speak, but she knew better. In the Council chamber, you did not interrupt the High Arbiter. You listened. You obeyed, Vorath continued. The Council has watched this expansion with growing concern. We have been patient. We have been merciful. But our patience has ended. He raised one long gray hand. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a map of human space. Red lines surrounded every human colony. Humanity will surrender all 17 colony worlds to Council administration, Vorath announced. Humanity will pay tribute in rare minerals for the next 200 years. Humanity will reduce its fleet to 50 ships, none larger than a patrol vessel. Humanity will accept permanent observers on Earth to ensure compliance. The chamber was silent. Yuna felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon her. Vorath smiled. It was not a kind smile. You have 72 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, the Council will take your colonies by force. Your fleet will be destroyed. Your species will learn its place in the galaxy. He sat down. The message was clear. Submit or die. Yuna stepped forward. Her voice was steady when she spoke. High Arbiter, I request time to consult with my government on Earth. 72 hours, Vorath repeated. Use them wisely, human. As Yuna walked out of the chamber, she felt the aliens watching her. Some looked amused. Others looked bored. They had seen this before, many times. Young species always thought they were special. Young species always learned they were not. In the corridor outside, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was Delegate Krenix of the Villani Dominion, a reptilian species with scales the color of dark emeralds. Unlike the others, Krenix did not look amused. He looked almost sad. Ambassador Kim, he said quietly. A word of advice. Yuna stopped. Yes. Accept the terms, Krenix said. I know they seem harsh, but the alternative is worse. Much worse? You speak from experience? Krenix's eyes grew distant. 300 years ago, my people refused a similar demand. The Council burned our outer colonies. 60 million Villani died. We submitted after that. He paused. The Council always wins, Ambassador. Always. Do not let your pride destroy your people. Yuna nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty, Delegate. She continued walking, her mind racing. Within the hour, she was on a ship heading back to Earth. The emergency meeting took place in a bunker. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Admiral Taemin Park sat at the head of the table. His face like carved stone. Beside him was General Hunwoo Choi, commander of all ground forces. And across from them sat Dr. Mingi Han, Earth's greatest strategic mind. Yuna told them everything. When she finished, silence filled the room. Admiral Park spoke first. 12-1. Their fleet outnumbers ours 12-1. Dr. Mingi Han pulled up data on her tablet. They have also positioned warships near every one of our colonies. If we refuse, They can strike all 17 worlds simultaneously. We cannot defend them all. General Choi slammed his fist on the table. So we just surrender? Give up everything our people built. The mathematics are clear, Dr. Han said. We cannot win a conventional war. Then we fight an unconventional one, Choi replied. Admiral Park raised his hand for silence. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, even through the bunker's cameras, he could see the Korean mountains, ancient and unmoved by the passage of time. Tell me, he said quietly, what do they know about us? Yuna frowned. They know our fleet strength, our technology level, our territory. They have studied us for years, No Park said. What do they know about us? About humans? About what we are? Dr. Han understood first. Her eyes widened. They studied our capabilities, but not our history. Not our history, Park agreed. He turned back to face them. They see a young species with a small fleet. They see easy prey. But they do not know about the wars we have fought against each other. They do not know about the times we faced impossible odds and refused to die. They do not know what humans do when someone tells us to kneel. General Choi leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Park looked at each of them in turn. His eyes were calm, but beneath the calm was something else. Something that had burned in human hearts since the first tribe stood against a larger enemy. I am suggesting, he said, that we teach them. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. Admiral, if we refuse their terms, they will attack. Yes, millions will die. Yes, we might lose everything. Admiral Park nodded slowly. Or we might show the galaxy something it has forgotten. That some things are worth more than survival, that freedom is not given. It is taken. And held. With blood, if necessary. The room was silent for a long moment. Then General Choi smiled. It was a fierce smile, the smile of a warrior who has found his purpose. I will begin preparing our ground forces. Dr. Han closed her tablet. I will start working on new strategies. If we cannot win with numbers, we will win with creativity. Yuna took a deep breath. She thought of her family, her friends, everyone on Earth who would be affected by this choice. Then she thought of her grandfather, who had told her stories of resistance fighters who faced tanks with rifles and never surrendered. I will prepare our reply, she said. Admiral Park nodded. He looked at the map one more time, at the red markers surrounding human space, like a closing fist. 72 hours, he said. Let us use them wisely. 71 hours had passed. The Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than ever before. Representatives from species across the galaxy had come to watch. This was entertainment for them. Another young race learning its place. Another proud species brought to its knees. High Arbiter Voreth sat in his elevated seat, his gray face showing quiet satisfaction. He had done this many times before. The script was always the same. The young species would beg. They would negotiate. They would offer everything they had for mercy. And in the end, they would submit. They always submitted. The doors of the chamber opened. Ambassador Yuna Kim walked in alone. She wore a simple black uniform, the formal dress of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her steps were steady. Her face was calm. Too calm, some observers noted. Where was the fear? Where was the desperation? Yuna took her place in the center of the chamber. She looked up at Voreth and waited. The High Arbiter smiled his cold smile. Ambassador Kim, you have had 72 hours to consider our terms. The Council is prepared to hear Earth's response. Yuna did not speak immediately. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. With a simple touch, she activated a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. Visible to all, it was a document. A single page of text translated into every known galactic language. Voreth's smile faded slightly. What is this? Earth's official response, Yuna said. Her voice was clear and strong, reaching every corner of the vast room. The translation systems hummed as the document became readable to each species present. And then, slowly, the meaning became clear. It was not a surrender. It was not a negotiation. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a formal declaration of war against the Galactic Council, and all member states that supported the ultimatum. The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in 100 different languages. Some jumped to their feet. Others stared in disbelief. In 3,000 years of council history, no species had ever responded to an ultimatum this way. Not one. Not ever. Vorath rose from his seat, his stone-gray face showing genuine shock. Ambassador, do you understand what you are doing? Perfectly, Una replied. You cannot win this war. Your fleet is nothing compared to ours. Your colonies will burn. Your homeworld will fall. Your entire species will be erased from history. Una smiled. It was a small smile, but it silenced the room more effectively than any shout. Hi, Arbiter, she said. You have spent years studying humanity. Your scientists have analyzed our technology. Your military has counted our ships. Your strategists have measured our territory and calculated our resources. She paused, letting her words sink in. But you never studied our history? Vorath frowned. Your history is irrelevant. Only power matters in the galaxy. Then let me give you a brief lesson. Una's voice grew stronger. For thousands of years, humans have fought each other. We have waged wars that killed millions. We have faced enemies who outnumbered us, outgunned us, surrounded us completely. And again, we have refused to surrender. She took a step forward, her eyes locked on Vorath. We have fought in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. We have held cities street by street, building by building, room by room. We have faced tanks with rifles and bombs with bare hands. We have turned every defeat into a delay and every delay into a chance for victory. The chamber was utterly silent now. Every alien watched the small human woman with growing unease. You see our small fleet and think we are weak, Una continued. You see our young civilization and think we are naive, but you do not see what lies beneath. You do not understand the fire that burns in human hearts when someone tells us to kneel. She raised her hand, pointing directly at Vorath. You gave us a choice between slavery and war. You thought it was no choice at all. You thought we would calculate the odds, see that we cannot win, and submit like every other species before us. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but it carried through the entire chamber. You were wrong. Vorath's composure finally cracked. You are condemning your people to death. No, Una replied. We are choosing to live free or die trying. That is the human way. That has always been the human way. And no amount of ships, no number of threats, no power in this galaxy will change that. She turned to face the assembled representatives. To every species watching this broadcast, remember this moment. Remember what you see today. A species that refused to kneel. A species that chose war over chains. Because what we do today, you can do tomorrow. The Council's power is built on fear. And fear only works when you are afraid. She looked back at Vorath one final time. We are not afraid. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. No one moved to stop her. No one spoke as the doors closed behind her. The chamber exploded into chaos. Far from the council chamber, on a space station at the edge of neutral territory, Commander Thesa of the Elorian Confederation watched the broadcast with wide eyes. Her species had remained neutral for centuries, neither supporting nor opposing the council. They observed, they recorded, they did not interfere. But what Thesa had just witnessed shook something deep inside her. She immediately began searching through old Earth broadcasts, records, histories. For hours, she read about human wars and revolutions. She watched footage of soldiers charging into hopeless battles. She read accounts of resistance fighters who faced death every day and never stopped fighting. And slowly, a terrible understanding grew in her mind. The council had made a mistake. A terrible, catastrophic mistake. They had assumed humans were like every other species. They had assumed humans would calculate, would reason, would choose survival over everything else. But humans were not like other species. Humans believed in things. Abstract concepts like freedom and honor and dignity. Things that could not be measured or calculated. Things that made no logical sense, and humans were willing to die for those things. Thesa leaned back in her chair, her heart racing. She had seen many conflicts in her long career. She had watched empires rise and fall. But she had never seen anything like this. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the same broadcast. Most dismissed humanity as foolish, suicidal, doomed. But some, especially those whose ancestors had once stood against the Council and lost, felt something stir in their hearts. Something that had been buried for generations. Hope on Earth. Admiral Temin Park stood in the command center, watching Yuna's speech. When it ended, he allowed himself a small smile. "Well done, Ambassador," he said quietly. General Hinwu Choi stood beside him. "They will come for us now. Yes, we are ready." Park looked at the screens showing Earth's defense grid, the fleet positions, the colony preparations. Everything they had built in 72 hours. Everything they would need to survive the coming storm. "We are as ready as we can be," he said. "Now we teach the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." The first Council warships jumped into human space 6 hours later. The war had begun. The Council's war fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 8,000 warships from 12 different species, carrying millions of soldiers and enough firepower to crack planets in half. Military experts across the galaxy predicted humanity's total defeat within 3 months. Some said it would take only weeks. Admiral Veroth himself led the invasion. He wanted to personally witness humanity's destruction. He wanted to be there when the last human ship burned and the last human colony surrendered. But something strange happened. The humans did not follow the script. Captain Jiho Lee commanded the battleship Defiance, one of only 300 ships in Earth's entire fleet. On paper, he should have been hiding, retreating, trying to delay the inevitable. Instead, he attacked. His task force of 20 ships appeared behind the Council's main fleet like ghosts. They struck the supply convoy before anyone knew they were there. 30 transport ships carrying food, fuel, and ammunition for the invasion force went up in flames. Then, before the Council could respond, Jiho's ships disappeared into deep space. The Council commanders were furious. They sent hunting groups after the human raiders. None of them came back. Jiho's tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Human ships were smaller, yes, but they were also faster and more agile. And human crews fought like nothing the Council had ever faced. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not surrender when surrounded. In one famous engagement, a human destroyer with failing engines rammed directly into a Council dreadnought. Destroying both ships, the Council captain who survived the battle sent a report that would be repeated. Throughout the war, they are insane. They would rather die than lose. How do you fight an enemy who is not afraid to die? On the colony world of New Busan, General Hyunwoo Choi prepared for ground invasion. The Council had assumed this would be easy. Orbital bombardment would destroy military targets, then troops would land and occupy the cities. The colonists would surrender or be killed. The colonists did not surrender. When Council forces landed outside the main city, they found no one. The streets were empty. The buildings were dark. It seemed like everyone had fled. Then the shooting started. Every building had become a fortress. Every street corner held an ambush. The colonists had armed themselves with anything they could find. Factory workers carried rifles. Farmers used hunting weapons. Grandmothers threw explosives from rooftops. General Choi had trained them well. They did not fight like a regular army. They fought like something far more dangerous. They fought like people defending their homes. The Council's first assault lost half its soldiers in 3 hours. The second assault never made it past the first street. The third assault managed to capture a hospital, only to discover it was empty and rigged with bombs. The ground commander sent desperate messages to his superiors. "We need more troops. We need 10 times more troops. These people will not stop fighting." Back on Earth, Dr. Mingi Han worked 20 hours a day in a secret facility. Her team of scientists was developing weapons that should have taken years to create. But they did not have years. They had weeks, maybe days. Possible was a word they no longer used. Minji had realized something early in the war. The Council had superior technology, but they had stopped innovating centuries ago. Why improve what already works? They were comfortable, lazy, overconfident. Humans were none of those things in 6 weeks. Minji's team created a new type of missile that could track and destroy enemy ships through hyperspace. In 8 weeks, they developed armor that could resist Council energy weapons. In 10 weeks, they built a communication system that the Council could not jam or intercept. Every new weapon was immediately sent to the front lines. Every new technology was shared with every human ship and colony. The Council kept waiting for humanity to run out of resources, run out of ideas, run out of will. They kept waiting. Commander Thesa watched it all from her observation post. The Elorian Confederation had declared neutrality, but she found herself unable to look away. Every day brought new reports, new battles, new impossible human victories. She had spent months studying human history now. She understood things that the Council did not. She knew about the ancient Greeks who had held mountain passes against armies 10 times their size. She knew about the small island nation that had stood alone against a continent-spanning empire. She knew about guerrilla fighters in jungles and resistance cells in occupied cities and ordinary people, who became heroes simply by refusing to give up. Humans had a word for this. They called it spirit. It could not be measured. It could not be calculated. But it was real, and it was powerful. The Council had completely underestimated it. Thesa wrote a report to her government. The humans are not winning, she admitted. Their losses are terrible. They have lost 3 colonies and dozens of ships. But they are not losing either. They have slowed the Council's advance to a crawl. They have destroyed hundreds of enemy ships, and they show no signs of surrender. She paused, considering her next words carefully. I believe the Council has made a strategic error. They assumed this would be a war of attrition, which they would inevitably win. But the humans are not fighting a war of attrition. They are fighting a war of inspiration. Every day they survive. Every battle they win, every act of defiance sends a message to the entire galaxy. She looked at the latest reports. On the slave world of Telori Prime, workers had started refusing orders. On Nexer 4, saboteurs had damaged a Council shipyard. Small acts, significant by themselves. But they were happening more and more frequently. The message is simple, Thesa wrote. The Council is not invincible. The Council can be fought. And if humanity can stand against them, perhaps others can too. She sent the report, knowing it would cause alarm in her government. Neutrality suddenly seemed much more complicated. 6 months into the war, Admiral Taman Park looked at the latest casualty figures. The numbers were terrible. Thousands dead. 3 colonies lost. 1/3 of the fleet destroyed. But they were still fighting, still holding, still free. He called a meeting of his senior commanders. Captain Jiho Lee, attended by hologram, his face tired but determined. General Choi reported from New Busan, which had held against 12 separate assaults. Dr. Minji Han brought plans for new weapons and new strategies. The Council expected us to break by now, Park said. We have not broken, but we cannot win by defense alone. We cannot simply survive forever. He activated a star map showing the galaxy. At the center was Kethra Prime, the Council's capital. It is time to stop defending, Park said. It is time to attack. The room went silent. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. It was impossible, insane, suicidal. It was perfectly human. Jiho Lee smiled his tired smile. When do we leave? Park looked at his officers, these men and women who had already given everything for humanity. He felt proud of them, proud of his species, proud of what they had become. We leave, he said, when the galaxy least expects it. High Arbiter Voreth stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. 6 months of war. 6 months of the most powerful military force in galactic history, grinding against a species that should have been crushed in weeks. And somehow, impossibly, the situation was getting worse. It was not just the humans. That was the part that kept Voroth awake at night. The humans were bad enough. Their suicidal bravery and their endless creativity and their absolute refusal to know when they were beaten. But now, something else was happening. Something far more dangerous. Other species were starting to resist. On Talori Prime, a world that had been under council control for 300 years, workers had begun organized strikes. Talori were a peaceful species, conquered easily, broken completely. They had never caused trouble before. But now, young Talori watched human battle footage on illegal broadcasts. They shared stories of human victories. They whispered a word that had been forbidden for generations: freedom. The first uprising happened in a mining complex. 500 Talori workers refused to work. Council security forces moved in to crush them. The workers fought back with mining tools and bare hands. Most of them died. But the next day, another mine went on strike, and another. On Nexer 4, a species known for their technical skills, had been integrated into the council 200 years ago. Integration meant their culture was erased, their language forbidden, their history rewritten. The Nexari had accepted this. They had no choice, until now. Nexari engineers began sabotaging council shipyards. They made small changes to weapon systems, tiny errors that would only show up in combat. Council ships started having mysterious malfunctions. Navigation systems failed. Engines exploded. No one could prove the Nexari were responsible, but everyone knew. Voroth ordered mass arrests. He ordered public executions. He ordered terror and punishment and examples made of anyone who disobeyed. It did not help. If anything, it made things worse. Every dead Talori became a martyr. Every executed Nexari became a hero. The more the council punished, the more resistance grew. It was like trying to put out a fire by throwing fuel on it, and at the center of it all, still fighting, still surviving, were the humans. Admiral Temenpark understood what was happening. The war had transformed from a simple military conflict into something much larger. Humanity had become a symbol, a proof of concept. Evidence that the council could be fought, he decided to use this. Ambassador Unakim traveled in secret to meet Commander Thesa. The Elorian Confederation had remained neutral, but Thesa had been sending private messages to Earth for months. More importantly, her government was starting to waver. They met on a small station in unclaimed space. Una looked tired. The war had aged her. But her eyes still held that same fire that had shocked the council 6 months ago. "I am not asking you to fight with us," Una said. "Duh. I know the Elorians value peace. I respect that." Thesa nodded carefully. "Then what are you asking? Stop trading with the council. That is all. Stop selling them fuel. Stop repairing their ships. Stop providing supplies." Una leaned forward. "You do not have to stand with us. Just stop standing against us." Thesa was silent for a long moment. "If we do this, the council will be angry. They might turn their attention to us next." "Yes," Una admitted. "There is risk. There is always risk. But ask yourself this. If the council defeats us, what happens next? They've already shown they will crush anyone who challenges them. Today, it is humanity. Tomorrow, it might be you." Thesa thought about the reports she had been reading. The growing unrest, spreading resistance, the cracks appearing in an empire that had seemed eternal. "I will speak to my government," she said finally. "I cannot promise anything, but I will speak to them," Una smiled. "That is all I ask." While diplomats talked, soldiers prepared for the impossible. Captain Jiho Lee gathered his task force at a hidden base deep in an asteroid field. 47 ships, the best humanity had left. They had been reinforced with captured council technology and new weapons from Dr. Minji, Han's labs. Their target was Kethra Prime itself, the heart of the council. It's the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. They were not trying to conquer it. That truly would be impossible. They were trying to reach it. To appear in the skies above the council capital. To prove that nowhere was safe. To show the galaxy that human ships could strike anywhere, anytime. The plan was insane. Most of them would probably die. Jiho explained this clearly to every member of his task force. Not a single person requested transfer. They launched on a date chosen specifically for its meaning. It was the anniversary of the first human who had walked on their own moon, centuries ago. A day when humanity had looked at the impossible and said, "We will do it anyway." The approach took weeks. They traveled through unmapped space, avoiding patrol routes, hiding in gas clouds and asteroid fields. Dr. Minji Han's new stealth technology kept them invisible to Council sensors. Meanwhile, something remarkable was happening elsewhere. The Telori uprising had spread to every major city on their homeworld. Nexari saboteurs had crippled 3 more shipyards, and on the border of Council space, 2 small species quietly withdrew their fleets from the war against humanity. They cited logistical concerns. Everyone knew the real reason. Vorath was losing control. Not of the war against humanity that was still grinding forward, but of everything else. The empire he had ruled for centuries was starting to crack. He ordered more ships to Kethra Prime. He strengthened the defensive grid, prepared for an attack he was certain would never come. He was wrong. The Battle of Kethra Reach began at dawn local time. Jiho's task force emerged from hyperspace directly inside the Council's outer defensive perimeter. They had used stolen codes and Nexari intelligence to find a gap in the sensors. Alarms screamed across the capital system. Thousands of Council ships scrambled to intercept, but the humans were not trying to fight them. They were trying to get past them. Jiho's ship, the Defiance, led the charge. They took hit after hit, shields failing, hull breaching, fires spreading through multiple decks, but they kept going. 20 ships were destroyed in the first hour, then 30, then 35. Council threw everything they had at the tiny human fleet. Still they came. General Hianwoo Choi, watching from New Busan, held his breath as the battle reports came in. Dr. Minji Han clutched her console so hard her knuckles turned white. On Earth, billions watched the live footage, knowing they were witnessing history. 12 human ships broke through the final defensive line. The Defiance was among them. Barely holding together, Jiho bleeding from a wound on his forehead, but he was smiling as he gave the order. All ships begin broadcast. Every screen on Kethra Prime lit up. Every communication channel carried the same message. A simple image, human warships hanging in the sky above the Council's own capital. For 3,000 years, Jiho's voice echoed across the planet. You have told the galaxy that you are invincible. Today, humanity proves you wrong. We are here. We reached your heart. And if we can do it, others can too. He paused, letting the words sink in. To every species watching, the Council is not your gods. They are not your masters. They're not invincible. They bleed like anyone else, and they can fall like anyone else. The broadcast ended. Council ships were closing in. There was no escape. But it did not matter. The message had been sent. The symbol had been created. The fire that humanity had started was now burning across the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. The war did not end with a final great battle. It ended with a collapse. 3 days after human ships appeared above Kethra Prime, the Alorian Confederation announced they were withdrawing from all Council trade agreements. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A major neutral power had chosen a side without firing a single shot. Within a week, 2 more species followed. Then 10. The Tal'Ari declared independence on the same day that Nexari engineers disabled the power grid on their occupied homeworld. Council troops found themselves stranded on hostile planets, surrounded by populations that no longer feared them. High Arbiter Vorath called emergency meetings. He demanded loyalty. He threatened punishment. He promised rewards for those who remained faithful. No one listened anymore. The Council had ruled through fear. For 3,000 years, species had submitted because they believed resistance was impossible. The humans had proved it was not. And once that belief cracked, the entire structure built upon it began to crumble. Vorath fled Kethra Prime on a private ship, taking only his most loyal guards. He left behind a government in chaos, a military in rebellion, and an empire falling apart. History would remember him as the leader, who lost everything because he underestimated a small species from a distant world. Admiral Taman Park received the news on the bridge of his flagship. The Council's main fleet was retreating from human space. Their allies were deserting. Their government had collapsed. Humanity had won. Park did not celebrate. He looked at the casualty reports instead. The names of the dead. The list of destroyed ships. The colonies that had been burned before they could be liberated. They had won. But the cost had been terrible. Captain Jiho Lee had survived the Battle of Kethra Reach. Barely, his ship. The Defiance had been captured after its engines failed. He had spent 2 weeks as a prisoner before Talori rebels freed him during their uprising. Now he stood beside Admiral Park, his arm in a sling, watching the Council fleet retreat. "We did it," Jiho said quietly. "We actually did it," Park nodded slowly. "We did, but it is not over. Not yet." He was right. Winning the war was only the beginning. Now came the harder task, building something better. Ambassador Unikim traveled to what remained of the Council headquarters. The great chamber that had once intimidated her was now half empty. Many seats stood vacant, their occupants having fled or switched sides or simply given up. She did not come to demand tribute. She did not come to seek revenge. She came with a proposal. "The old Council is dead," she told the assembled representatives. "Good. It deserved to die. But the galaxy still needs order. It still needs cooperation. It still needs some way for species to resolve their differences without war." She paused, looking at the faces around her. Some were hostile. Some were curious. Some looked hopeful for the first time in centuries. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We never did. We simply wanted to be free. And now we want everyone else to be free too. She activated a holographic display showing her proposal. A new galactic organization. Not built on conquest and fear, but on voluntary membership and mutual respect. No species would be forced to join. No species would be punished for leaving. Decisions would be made together, not imposed from above. "You tried to make us kneel," Una said. "Instead, you reminded the galaxy how to stand. Let us build something worthy of that lesson." The vote was not unanimous. Some species refused to participate. Some harbored too much anger or pride. But enough agreed to give the new organization a chance. It would take years to build. There would be setbacks and conflicts, and moments when the whole project seemed doomed. But it would survive, and it would grow. 1 year after the war ended, Dr. Minji Han stood in a laboratory that would have seemed impossible before. Human scientists worked alongside Talori engineers and Nexari technicians and researchers from a dozen other species. They were developing new technologies together, sharing knowledge. Learning from each other, Minji watched a young Talori student explain a concept to a human colleague. Both were smiling. This is what it was all for, she thought. Not the battles. Not the victories. This. General Hyun Woo Choi had retired from military service. He now ran a training academy for liberation forces, teaching the tactics that had saved humanity to species still fighting for their freedom on the edges of known space. His students came from everywhere, united by a common dream. Commander Thesa had become the Elorian, ambassador to Earth. She spent her days marveling at the chaotic, passionate, and possibly stubborn species that had changed everything. She wrote regular reports to her government, but mostly she just watched. They argue about everything, she noted in one message. They disagree constantly. They seem incapable of unity for more than 5 minutes at a time. And yet, when it matters, when they face a true threat, they come together with a force that nothing can stop. I still do not fully understand them. I suspect I never will. Admiral Taman Park made one final journey before his own retirement. He traveled to Earth, to a memorial that had been built on a hillside overlooking the sea. The memorial was simple. A wall of black stone bearing names. Thousands of names. Every human who had died in the war, every soldier, every civilian, every person who had given their life so that others could be free. Park walked slowly along the wall, reading the names. He knew many of them personally. Friends, comrades, students he had trained. and officers he had commanded. A young cadet followed him, assigned as his escort. She was barely 20 years old, born the same year humanity had made first contact. She had grown up during the war, watching battles on screens, hearing stories of heroes. "Admiral," she asked quietly, "was it worth it?" Park stopped walking. He looked at the names on the wall, then at the young woman beside him, then at the sky above, where stars were beginning to appear in the evening light. He thought about the question carefully. He owed her an honest answer. "The council gave us a choice," he said finally. "Slavery or war." They believed it was not a choice at all. They believed any rational species would choose slavery over certain destruction. He touched the wall gently, feeling the carved letters beneath his fingers. They did not understand that some things matter more than survival: freedom, dignity, the right to choose your own path. These are not luxuries. They are the foundation of everything worthwhile in life. He looked at the cadet, his eyes carrying the weight of everything he had seen and done. Was it worth it? Ask the Telluri, free for the first time in 3 centuries. Ask the Nexari, speaking their own language again. Ask every species that saw our example and found the courage to stand up. He turned back to the memorial. Ask the people whose names are on this wall. They knew the answer. They gave everything to prove it. The cadet nodded slowly, understanding. Park placed his hand flat against the stone, a final salute to the fallen. "The council thought they understood us. They looked at our small fleet and our young civilization and saw weakness. But they never studied our history. They never learned the one truth that defines humanity." He stepped back from the wall. "We do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for, win or lose. And when you face an enemy like that, an enemy who will never stop, never surrender, never accept chains, no matter the cost." He smiled, a tired smile full of pride and sorrow. "You have already lost. You just do not know it yet." The sun set over the memorial. The stars came out, those distant lights that humanity had once dreamed of reaching. They had reached them. They had fought for them. They had earned the right to live among them as a free people, and across the galaxy. Other species looked up at those same stars with new hope in their hearts. Hope that humanity had given them. Hope that would change everything. The council had tried to blackmail humans. The galaxy would never forget how humanity replied.